Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another session, review session, which we are having at the Bibliophile with the Bibliophile family. And today I am reviewing a book with the title Jonathan Livingston Seagull: A Story by Richard Bach. And this was the book that I was reading during the Swadharma challenge that we had. And I felt that I would like to share it with you too. So this review is going to be very brief because I would prefer everybody to interact, where this is concerned. So we will have sessions of what I'm going to talk about, what's in this book, combined with a bit of interaction. So I would always like it if you also, chip in your opinions, ideas, and thoughts and experiences. So that would make it really lively. Okay, so first let's go to the this particular book, the author and the book. Now, before I touch upon the author and this book, of course, I received this particular book many years ago, and I just looked at it and said, "Oh, okay, fine." And I just read through it, very cursory reading, and I said, "Okay, fine, nothing great about it." But as I grew older and maybe wiser, and when I came across this book again, I decided, no, let me just put my heart and mind into this book and read it properly, as one should. And believe me, it changed my perspective of a lot of things. And every time I go through it, even during this review period when I had to, prepare on this review, I found a lot of nuggets of little gems, of sayings and quotes which really are valid in today's world. So going back to the author and the book, so Richard Bach, he is the author. He was a pilot, and he published this book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, in 1970. And in 1959, I think he wrote down the story, and it took him 8 years to complete this. And this book, if you look at it, it's you can finish it in one sitting if you want to, but it's got a lot of photographs of seagulls, and it takes you maybe an hour or so to complete this book if you're going to sit it, at one sitting if you want to complete it. And it's pretty popular, very highly popular, and it's like an international bestseller list and all that. So what is this book all about? It's actually a motivational tale, and it's got profound meaning. And it tells you the story of a seagull whose name is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Okay. And he is a bird, the seagull. He wants to desperately fly perfectly. He wants to achieve perfection. He wants to come to that level of perfection where and he tries to challenge himself to achieve that perfection. So it's all about, this book is all about finding your potential, your true potential, and it also encourages you to break out of your limitations or your boundaries that you have created for yourself. It tells you that you can cross those boundaries, because society and tradition always tells you to stick to a certain line, and not to cross that line. So this book shows you how Jonathan was able to cross that boundary, and he was able to clear those structures, those rigid structures, those organized structures. He was able to come out of it, and he was able to scale new heights, right? So we have three parts in this book. So part one is something which I'm going to take right now. So here, part one, it actually introduces this seagull. He is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He's totally different from other members of his community, his the other seagulls, and that community is called the flock. So other seagulls, what they are focusing on is just getting food for survival, and they, hover around these fishing boats, and they're more interested in eating and obviously sleeping and flying around and things like that, but nothing else. They don't have too much of an aim other than eating and just surviving. So, but Jonathan, what he does is he spends most of his days practicing how to dive and how to, practice all these difficult maneuvers of flying, diving, and most of the time he's failing and he's crashing. And what his family tells him, they tell him, you're very foolish to do all this. You should actually be focusing on getting food, not trying to fly. What are you going to achieve by just knowing how to fly? So they said, you are losing weight. You know that when winter arrives, you will not be able to get any food. So you should know there will be very few boats, and all the fish that are on the surface of the ocean, they will be going deep into the ocean, and you won't get any food. So this is the best time you should, you know uh, learn how to fly and catch these fish and all that. So John says, oh, okay, he feels okay. He becomes, oh, he's obedient for a little while. He'll say, okay, for a few days, he says, okay, I will do that. I think what my dad is saying is right. And after a few days, again, this bug catches him, this flying bug. He wants to still keep going out into the sea. Even though he is hungry and all that, he is very happy to be learning how to fly. So he is more interested, where flying is concerned, he is more interested in speed. That's what he is looking at. So all this, what he does is every single day he goes out flying and diving, and he goes first he goes 1,000 feet up to the air, and then he dives down, then he goes 2,000 feet, he goes down, and then at certain point of time he keeps hitting the water. He crashes into the water, it hurts him, he kind of sees stars literally, and then he decides, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I made a mistake. But then again the bug catches him. So what happens is, while he is practicing this, he suddenly comes to this point where he realizes that if he folds his wings very tightly, he will be able to dive faster and he will not be hurting himself. So he says, oh, this is a good thing that has happened to me. I can, I am breaking the seagull record of speed of 200 at 214 miles an hour. So he is so excited, about this discovery, that he decides that, I must go back to this flock, and the flock, that is this group of people, seagulls that were, not doing any of this. And he feels that I must inform them, show them, you can do this if you really work on it. But instead of, celebrating these elders, that is the elders of this flock of seagulls, they call the elders, they summon him, to a meeting. There's a gathering of the council, and this gathering is for shame. Okay, so these elders, they summon him, and they say, you are breaking our rules and all that of what we have and all this, and we are going to banish you. You are now going to be treated as an outcast. You have violated the traditions of this gull family, and life is only about eating and staying alive, and that is not what you're doing. So you should not be here in this with this group at all. We are banishing you. So Jonathan, he gets banished, and he is going to this. There is this particular gull, this particular place where he has been banished to, and there's nothing that he can do about it, and he just goes there and he says, okay, I'm all alone, but I am going to keep practicing. So he decides that no, I whatever they say, I'm still going to keep practicing. And then what happens is he decide, he suddenly discovers, that while he is doing this has become like his passion, and he lets go of his boredom. He is not bored anymore. He lets go of his fear, so he is able to overcome his fear and his anger. And uh, he he kind of, his whole perspective of life changes in this situation when he is alone, when he is practicing all alone. And then what happens is that I'll tell you. Yeah. So where he practices is this place called the Far Cliffs. So he is flying to this Far Cliffs, and this is the place where he is, he's in spending his time in solitude and everything. And even when he is doing this alone, in the beginning he is very hurt. He feels that other girls are not believing me about this glory of flight. He wants to share it with these girls, but they are not believing him. And he feels that okay, whatever it is, I will just keep practicing every single day. So in this way he learns how to dive for tasty fish. And then these, even when the fish are deep into the under the sea, he is able to uh, hunt for them. He's able to get them. He feels now that he doesn't have to rely on these scraps which are coming from these fishing boats. These fishermen, they catch the fish, and all these offals and everything they cut and clean, and all the bad fish they throw it all about. So that's how these seagulls are getting their food. So he feels that I don't have to beg for all this. I can get it by myself. So then he learned how to sleep in the air, how to ride the high winds. So he was not feeling very sorry. He was not at all sorry for being exiled. In fact, he learned that, I can be free and I can be happy and I can live a long life by learning how to fly well. And what happens here is that there are two beautiful gulls, uh, you know, wiser gulls, who are watching him, and they feel that Jonathan seems to be the ideal candidate to be taken under their wings. It's like when you do something, and people find a couple of people find you, and look at you and discover you, and they feel that you can do even better under guidance. So they're like mentors. So what happens here, these two girls, they take Jonathan to a place. They tell him to come to a special place where the girls are training. And then he says, you can learn about more about this flight, understanding of this flight in this special place. And because they realize his potential and they see that he is capable of reaching greater heights. So Jonathan understands this and he realizes it himself. So what happens is, this is the turning point in his life. So first point is where he is exiled to this far cliffs. Now from there, the next phase of his life begins. He is ready to leave the cliffs, and he joins the two girls to his next destination. So here, when this is the part one, and here you will see that Jonathan is actually chasing his passion. He is not just hankering for survival, he is chasing his passion. So, because he realizes that this flock is just, their aim is just to get food, eat, and go back home, go back to roost. But he is pursuing his perfection in flying. So, has there been, I'm posing a question to you. Has there been, any time in your life where you have faced, you've had a choice whether you can be in this safe place in your comfort zone or pursue a goal which you have in your mind, which everybody feels that is doesn't work, it is pointless, but you want to pursue that. Has there been any situation like this in your life? I mean, I would like to hear it from you guys, what you have experienced about this. Jonathan has gone, he has taken that leap into pursuing his passion. So what about you? Has there been a situation where you have taken a leap into doing what you want to do, despite others telling you no, 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 and all that? Has there been any situation like that? Experience? Anyone at any point in your life, however small it is?
Yeah, I'd like to share something here.
Yes, Ami.
Um, it might seem very irrelevant, probably, but
Hmm.
I took a leap of faith in doing nothing. It's very difficult to stop doing everything that you have been doing always.
Hmm.
So I'm talking about the post-COVID phase, 2021.
Hmm.
And that was a time when all of a sudden one evening I get a call from my older daughter who
Hmm.
was with my husband, and she says that there's something wrong with dad. And
Hmm.
he had to be admitted to the hospital in
Hmm.
emergency, and he
Hmm.
suffered severe cardiac arrest. He had to be revived thrice.
Hmm.
And by God's grace, he's with us today.
Hmm. Hmm.
So after that, what happened was I decided to do nothing.
Hmm.
And seeing the condition, seeing the situation, two young girls at home and husband almost invalid for more than 2 months.
Hmm.
And his mental and emotional condition was out of control.
Hmm.
So I took a call and I said, I'm not doing anything
Hmm.
till as long as as long as
Hmm.
I feel that okay, everything is back to normal. And
Hmm.
everyone around me was like, no, you're not doing the right thing. Things will fall back in place, and you can have help around, and you can have a cook, and you can have two domestic and three domestic helps. And I
Hmm.
said no.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that it's my passion to be at home, but yeah, I took it up passionately, and I said I'm not
Hmm.
doing anything else. I'm going to dedicate myself, and I
Oh.
did that, and
Hmm.
I saw results. My
Okay.
husband came out of whatever bad phase that was
Hmm.
pretty sooner than expected by the doctors,
Hmm.
and the family got back on track.
Hmm.
I Thereafter I decided, then things kept falling in one after the other, and
Hmm.
then I was like, okay, Abhi, my daughter is doing this. Let me not take up anything full time. Let me
Hmm.
not do this. Let me not. It took me almost 2.5 years
Hmm.
doing nothing,
Hmm.
but I kept on. I was passionate about doing whatever I was doing at that
Hmm.
moment, and I
Hmm.
I started enjoying myself. That no, I am with my family. I
Hmm.
know I'm keeping them safe. I know I am safe in their midst.
Right. But
So, well,
Ami, if you say you're not doing nothing, it was doing nothing in your sense. It was nothing, meaning you were not doing anything externally, like going out and doing what you were usually doing. But you were doing something, isn't it? You were doing
yeah,
something at home, right?
yeah,
And looking after family and taking care of them, which is it's a choice that you made, because you did have choice to do otherwise and get the help of other people to stand in and support system and things like that. But you decided, you made the decision to do it, and you feel that you did the right thing. And you did the right thing, because obviously he has recovered earlier than much later, faster
yes.
in fact. Yeah. So yes, that is really, it's wonderful, to hear that, when you decide to do something and you stick to it despite whatever anybody says. Anybody else who has got anything to share regarding this? Yeah, Zainab.
Hi, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, 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 yes.
Hi, Riti ma'am.
Yeah,
Hi,
hi.
everyone. So, I think there are two things in my life that I started, stop taking any advices from or any validation. Obviously, I don't take any validation from others, and you all know that. But
Mm,
two things that I kept on hearing because my family kept on seeing me, doing it regularly. One
mm,
is reading fiction,
mm,
and the other one is art. So
mm,
I do a lot of forms of art, and my family saw that, that nothing is coming out of it. Like, because they always saw me making money, from a very early age. And they
mm,
thought, ki, yoga is my passion, health, fitness industry is my passion, and I'm
mm,
making something out of it. But my husband and my family, my mother's side also, they kept on telling me, ki, what happens when you do art, even though my sister is professional artist, but
mm,
except her, everyone saw it as like a time waste, you can say,
mm,
wasting my
mm,
time, just like Jonathan.
mm,
So, and the second thing is fiction. My mom still asks me, looking at all those books, and she tells me, ki, what
mm,
happens when you read this? Like, तुम में हमने कोई change नहीं देखा. तो मतलब
mm,
क्या? तो I am asking like, what change you want to see in me?
mm,
And so I feel like I spend very less time with my family. There is a
mm,
reason behind it. So
mm.
1 2 hour I spend with them, but obviously it
Okay.
is not enough to let them judge ki, how much I've changed or what internally I have changed. So art and fiction, I don't need to
Mm.
prove it to someone else ki why I read
No,
it. But
no.
if someone asks me ki
Mm,
what is the advantage of reading it and what is the advantage of doing art, so I need to
mm,
have an answer on that. So that's why I
mm,
started doing my internal research and my own knowledge gaining on both the things. But
mm,
one principle that I've kept in my life:
mm,
if you are not doing it, then I will not take your advice, or I will not even take it seriously. Like, एक कान से
mm,
सुना एक
mm,
दूसरे कान से निकाल दिया. So example,
mm,
nowadays, people say if you don't have ovaries, you just don't talk about women at all.
mm,
so,
mm,
so like that, I have stopped taking any advices from people who don't do it, who personally
mm,
don't do it. Yeah.
mm. So yeah, because here you will notice that advice is unsolicited advice is free. It's always given free, and when you ask people actually for advice, you don't get any. But if you don't ask, you do have a whole line of people there ready to give you, and they don't even realize that they're advising you actually. Yeah, but when it comes to fiction and such things, it's like, if you derive happiness from it, why not? Because the end result is you want to be happy with what you're doing. So each his own, that is what I usually follow. So that's great, Zainab. So happy reading fiction now that readathon is coming up. You have a whole lot ready for yourself. And another thing, with this particular part is concerned, where Jonathan is, he's actually struggling to break free from his flock, and he succeeds in coming out of it. He does suffer through a lot of failures. He goes through failures, painful failures, physically painful failures, because he's trying to practice the art of flying. So, why is people find it very difficult that they don't want to do something because they feel that they will be made to look like a fool. People don't, they have this feeling that they want to do something, they want to break out of this particular mold, and they want to step out of it. But then they feel that, if I do something, they will think, oh, what a stupid thing she's doing, what a foolish thing she's doing. Why is it that we are finding it so difficult to to gain mastery of anything? Because because we feel that, you know, we'll be thought of as a fool. Most of the some There are many people who think like that, and so they stop themselves from going to the next level. What will society say? What will people say? You know, this is one thing that keeps going on in their minds, that they're made to look like a fool, and yet we don't want to be made to look like a fool. So that's not what Jonathan did. He didn't care a damn, you know, like what was happening. He just went on with it. He said, I don't care what people think. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to go ahead with it. Even if I'm exiled or whatever, you know, abandoned or isolated, I don't care. Has that happened to you when you have wanted to do something, you wanted to gain mastery over something, but then you feel that you will be thought of as a fool? Has anybody had that kind of feeling in their mind when it comes to doing something? Has anybody had that experience? It would be nice if you all share it, at least one experience. I would like to hear if anybody had.
So hi Retiji.
Yeah, hi Ruchi.
I feel that the biggest cage is, or the strongest cage that is built for is by ourselves. It's by our own limitations of our own
True.
mind that
Yeah.
we are. And once you start crossing that cage, then everything feels quite limitless. So and it is time is a big factor in it. Time brings in confidence, time brings in conviction, and with time you see many situations unfold in front of you as well. So
Right.
when the COVID time came, that was a time, and I think I was preparing to leave the corporate world. I worked in the media industry for 17 years, and I think the last 5 years of my stint in corporate, I was preparing myself. Mentally, I was not there. I was physically there, but mentally, I was not there. Because every moment I wished, but only I wished. I did not act upon my wish. So, pure wish without action yields into nothing.
Right.
2020, I took a plunge, and with everything at the right place, with everything going very well, work from home, I decided to move out of the corporate world, because you could see people fading away, people just perishing.
Yes,
And
that burnout that takes place.
yes, and you realize that how fragile life is, and what is the point of just getting wiped off.
Right.
So yes, this. So then, even then, it took me a lot of time to actually start understanding that what my passion is. And I think वो होता है ना कि जब आप एक दुकान में घुसते हैं तो आपको जो सबसे पहला चीज पसंद आता है, that is what exactly what your psychic being or your inner being is telling you, that this is it for you. So that was there since years. That was getting into the field of yoga, health and awareness. That was there since years, but I could never picture myself, because of self inhibitions and doubts, that I can take up this role and take charge in this area. Even after leaving, I took a couple of years to, and then you realize after corporate does one thing to you, it makes you realize or weigh things materialistically very well. कि ऐसा करने से क्या होगा और क्या नहीं होगा. But yes,
Right.
when you start chasing that passion or following that inner thing, number one, you don't get tired. Number two, you don't want to do things for the sake of it, but you want to do to the best of it. And it feels that you're walking the purpose of your life. So you feel, then you start growing spiritually as well, you start growing
Right.
ethically, morally as well. So there is a in-depth journey that starts,
True.
and which is a very fulfilling journey.
Yeah,
So,
fantastic.
yeah,
That's the thing, like you did, we need to break away from all these limitations. Ruchi, could you just mute your audio? Yeah, there's an echo, I think, feedback coming through. Okay, so what happens is, in this part, in the first part that we did, is just like Ruchi, like how you mentioned, you were in one phase and you wanted to shift to another phase, and you took the plunge. You were brave enough to, listen to your inner calling and just go and do it. That's what we actually need to learn. We need to learn how to, cross that bridge, and irrespective of whether we are going to fail or not fail, we still are going to go forward. We are not going to look back with regret. That's one thing that we need to all learn about. So part two, the second part of this particular book, it's all about learning to be perfection. And here now, Jonathan has gone with these two seagulls, and they are the kind of brilliant seagulls. They show him a different level of existence, and he jokingly calls this existence as heaven. And he realizes that, it is not a magical place, but it is a place where there are so many gulls that are having the same kind of thought as him, the same kind of dedication. All of them want to perfect their flight. So he is not the only one. So you will see that in the first part, he is with a group of, seagulls, which don't have that kind of thinking. They are happy with what they're doing. Now he has gone to a level where he is with a group of seagulls that want to perfect the art of flying. So his instructor here is Sullivan, and the Sullivan says that most of the gulls go through thousands of lives focusing on survival before they even think that there's more to life than just eating. And he says that, Jonathan has skipped many lives because he learned so much quickly. He has learned things much more quickly. So here what's happening is, he says Jonathan is a very quick learner. And as a result, they are guiding him. He is being guided. So he has now got mentors, and Sullivan is his instructor. And Sullivan is explaining to him, why there are very few gulls in this place. And he tells him about this finer aspects of flight, and they are practicing together till John is able to perfect it. And while he is doing this, one day he meets a wise elder gull called Chiang. And Chiang is going to teach him the most important lesson. Chiang tells him, heaven is not a place and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. This book has got lovely quotes that we can use in different instances. So heaven is not a place and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. So here he says, you begin to touch heaven the moment you touch perfection. The moment you touch perfection, you will touch heaven. So he says, to achieve this perfect speed, you should not limit yourself, your body. You should stop seeing yourself as a limited body, and you should know that your true nature is perfect, unlimited idea, and that exists everywhere at once. That's what he says. So he says, like if you're moving from one A to B, in the olden times, like, what we used to walk from point A to point B, and it used to take about, let us say, 3 or 4 days. Then with technological advance and everything, that time has reduced. The distance remains the same, but the time has reduced. Now, Jonathan is trying to achieve speed of flight. That means he wants to reach a spot at the shortest possible time period, So it is kind of, there is going to be no time when it comes to reaching a particular uh, point, to reach a particular destination. There is no question of time. You are here and the next moment you are there. So this is what what Chiang is trying to tell John. He says that, he demonstrates this by, he vanishes in a flash to another location, and he comes back again in an instant. And when Jonathan sees that, he says, I also want to do that. So the first lesson that Chiang is teaching John is that in order to fly as fast as your thought to anywhere, you must begin knowing that you are already there. You should start believing that you are already there. You should stop seeing yourself trapped in a body. So that makes you everywhere at once across space and time. I know this is a bit profound kind of thought, but I think we all can understand that because we read a lot of these philosophy and these books and things like that. So I'm sure I hope everybody understood what Jonathan was, what Chiang was trying to tell him here. He said, you should not limit yourself as a body, because you should think what is in your mind. Your body is like that. If you think of something, it should be, you are there. If I'm going to think I'm going to be there, you are actually there. So there is that existence, of time and place, that is just removed completely. So obviously Chiang has mastered this feat of instant travel, right? And he is giving Jonathan this valuable piece of instruction. And then the last thing he tells Jonathan is, before Chiang disappears and goes on to the next level, Chiang says, keep working on love. Because driven by the sense of love, Jonathan decides that he must return to earth. See, when you learn a lot of things and you keep it to yourself, what are you gaining? You have to give it to others. You have to share it. And Chiang says, keep working on love. And as a result of it, Jonathan, he decides to return to earth, and he wants to teach his former flock, he wants to show them, teach them how to be free. And what happens is Sullivan, his guide, tells him, if you go there, the gulls that are there on the ground, they will not understand you. And Sullivan feels that friendship between him and Jonathan will break off at this stage, but he says, no, that is not going to happen. That will not happen. What does he say? He says, I'll tell you what he says. He says, he says that if a friendship can overcome time and space, we will always be together. If we are overcoming time and you're overcoming space, then friendship, there is no question of there being a break in friendship, because friendship will always be there. We'll always be together. So then he returns, and he, as a result, he finds a new student called Fletcher, who's a young gull who has been banished, just like Jonathan was banished from his, to that other cliff. He was banished from this council, this community. He finds a young gull called Fletcher, and he takes Fletcher under his wings, because Fletcher also was one kind of rebel who wanted to test his flying prowess, and he wanted to do something different. So this is what happens, when he goes back to earth. He finds that Fletcher is there, flying here and there, just like Jonathan was doing, and he decides, okay, I am going to take Fletcher as my student. So before he goes, you know, when he is in this special place, in the so-called heaven, he learns more about the art of flying, and that feeling of kindness, it comes into him, and he wants to share that truth to another gull. You know, whatever Chiang was thinking of, was giving him that advice, he follows that. And Jonathan is a very quick learner, so he absorbed everything like a sponge. So even after Chiang vanished, after telling him, you know, keep working on love and everything, he decided, I must go back to earth, you know. And because if you overcome space, that means we are in the here, HERE, we are here. And if we overcome time, we are in the now. So where space is concerned, we are here, and where time is concerned, we are in the now. So we will always be in the now, and friendship will never be broken. We can, because friendship is overcoming space and time. This is what he wanted to tell Sullivan. So here in this part, so then we go on to the next part. So in this second part, what happens is Chiang is saying, don't believe what your eyes are telling you, because all that they show is limitation. You know, we see something and we say, okay, that is it. But there is more to it than what you see, right? So he teaches Jonathan. So this is one of the takeaways from this part, that Jonathan is, you know, he is told that, you know, your body is just as your thought. You, if you see your body as a thought, it is only in a visible form. Your body is in a visible form, but it is just a thought. So when you look at it, you know, when you look at this particular understanding, do you also believe in that feeling that, you know, you can overcome any physical limitation that you are going through? You know, you're having some physical limitations. Do you also feel, what does it mean to feel like that, you know, when you look at something, by understanding this particular point, you know, when don't believe what your eyes are telling you, all that they show is limitation. What do you feel? What do you think about this? You know, you have that inner power within you, and there are, the other side is all limitations that are laid out in front of you. So it is basically your power versus your limitations, versus the limits that you can go through. So anybody can say something about this? Yeah, Zainab.
In short, I always tell myself this one line: ki just because you have not done this till now, that does not mean that you cannot do it in future or
Very true.
yeah,
Yes.
soon. And the other thing I always tell myself, I remind myself, just because you can do everything, that does not mean that you should do everything.
True. We take a call on what we have to do, which is, we think of the right and the wrong of things, right? Where ethics and things are concerned, because we can do anything we want, but we have to be doing things which is on the right side. Very true. And, you know, Jonathan, you know, in this stage, when he is going to go back to earth, when he decides to go back to earth, he feels that, you know, the purpose of my life is that I need to return and I need to share this truth with the gulls, because there might be various gulls who are struggling and I can be of help to them. So do you feel, this is another question that, yeah, carrying on the legacy. Yes, Ami. So do you agree that, you know, this desire to help people, you know, this mentoring and teaching and all that, is that an important part of your personal growth or fulfillment? What do you feel? What do you, what do you feel? Just say something about it.
I feel it is 100%.
Yeah.
Because when you have grown or when you reach a certain level,
Right.
and if it is something that is, true, it is the correct thing, you really want to give it back to people, give
Yes.
it to others, make others happy. And
Yes.
it's like, if I am blessed, let all others also be blessed. If
True.
I am happy, let others be happy.
True.
This is actually something that comes in. इफ यू हैव, जैसे हम हिंदी में कहेंगे, जैसे सही माने में उसको ग्रहण किया है, तो आपको डेफिनेटली वो वापस देने की और उसको स्प्रेड करने की इच्छा होती है.
Right. So, it's so, people think, oh, teaching is just a profession and all that, but it involves a lot of dedication and giving it your all. And like, when you look at it, the teachers of today are they pretty underrated. They are not given that space where what they deserve. They are not given that recognition that they deserve. Though things are definitely changing, I won't say things in a very negative manner. Things are definitely changing. People are realizing that, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. So sharing this knowledge is something, yeah, it is slow, but let's say that it's going, that the graph is rising, hopefully. So Jonathan, he felt that he wanted to go back. So he had the desire to help others. This is what Chiang said: keep working on love. When you are filled with that compassion, that feeling to do something for others because you have benefited, you would like to share that with others. That makes you an incredibly different person, that who can, you are standing on your own feet. You are you're not bothered about the accolades you receive. You are past that. You just want to give for the sake of giving. It's not with anything in, with for any returns. You don't have that thought in mind that you want to get some returns. It's just that very fact, or that you're giving, gives you incredible happiness. Because after all, we are all in this world. The main aim in this world is to be happy. So that's why we do all this earning, doing good things for people, and it is basically to be happy. So this is one thing that he's trying to do. So he feels, so this is actually a very important part of, personal growth, when you share knowledge with others. And that's what our family, we TBF, we do it. So we can all say that we are just like, Jonathan Siegel, at least in this way where sharing is concerned. Okay, so now we come to the third part. So here, Jonathan is, like I told you, he had this Fletcher. He took Fletcher under his wing, and he is mentoring a group of outcasts. These people who have been thrown out by these elders from the council, because they have all wanted to do something different. They were rebels. So he starts mentoring this group of outcasts. He teaches them complex flying techniques, and he tells them that, this idea of freedom is unlimited. So although they enjoy this flying, although these girls enjoy flying, they are struggling to believe in this idea of freedom, because they don't understand that concept of time, space, and that physical body can surpass time and space. So Jonathan tells them, once you learn something, it's time to return to the flock. We let us go to the flock, because the flock was having so many girls who did not believe, or maybe they did have this. There are people who want to do it, but they are restricted because the elders are telling them like that. So he felt that they were all practicing in a different place, because they were all outcasts. He decides that he must get back to the flock and return to the flock and try and teach them there. So he reminds this group, this small group of outcasts, he tells them, we are free to go where we wish and to be what we are. He tells them that. So they return. So they believe him and they say, okay, let us do that. So they return to this beach, this council beach as it is called, where these flocks are all living. They return in a stunning formation, because they have all perfected the art of flying. So they return in this with this in this kind of formation, and and all these thousands of gulls, they're looking up at the sky, at these small group of gulls doing these fantastic flying maneuvers and everything. So all those gulls that were earlier saying, what's so great about this, all that we need to do is hunt for fish, nothing else, what is this flying thing for, they shut their mouths, they just kept quiet. And the elders, they were telling the flock, ignore all these people, ignore not the people, ignore all these birds that are up there, follow what we tell you, you have to follow us. But what happened is, these gulls, some of them were very curious. They started secretly sneaking out and trying to listen to Jonathan's talk and his his stories and everything. They sneaked out and they were listening to him at night. So Jonathan, he tells them, there was a gull called Kirk. He was injured and he's asking for help. And Jonathan tells him, free to be yourself. You are free to be yourself, your true self. And when Maynard, Kirk Maynard, this gull, when he hears this, what Jonathan says, he starts flying. So it just shows you, somebody just needs to encourage you and you can do it. The whole time your mind is saying, I can't do. But when somebody gives you that little bit of leverage, it says that, you can do that. And when you believe it, you can do it. You can do if you only believe, if you have faith in yourself. So this was a kind of, motivation and cajoling that he was doing to these young girls, to fly better and faster. He demonstrated to them, he suggested them, he pressurized them, like a parent, you give tough love basically. So he is doing this demonstration, suggestions, pressurizing them, and he's guiding them. And he was with them throughout. It was not that he's sitting there eating something, a fish, and saying, okay, guys, you fly here, you fly. He was not doing that. He was with them all the way through rain, shine, storm, cloudy days, wherever it was, he was with them. And then they all used to relax on the beach. And then they used to listen to all his crazy and not so crazy stories and everything. And gradually, what happened is the circle of gulls, they started growing, the number of gulls that were coming around Jonathan, they started increasing. Every day the crowd started increasing. And this is when he returned back to the council. And it has been a month, and the flock, the flock of birds, they were willing to rebel. Now they were not bothered about what the elders were saying, they were willing to come out of that particular comfort zone, and they felt that, yes, we want to do it. We don't care what the elders say. Right? Okay, I think Sher Singh was talking about selfies. Sher Singh. Okay, I think let's put on the video camera and take selfies, guys, and then we shall continue with the fag end of this particular topic.
Yes, good evening everyone. So जैसा रेती जी ने कहा कि free yourself and be yourself, so here we are.
So Sher Singh, you will click the pic, right?
Yes, I will click the.
Yeah.
So do we need to show any book, or we can just continue?
No book. This is a review, right? So
Okay, so ready. And so I request everyone to switch on the camera. Yes, Kamal sir, good evening. Balram ji, Uchi ji, Zainab may be busy with pizza.
poor Zainab.
Yes, Palak ji, our ready everyone.
Wait.
Yes, ready everyone. Smile. Done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today we have Sringariji in our selfie.
Today?
It's our pleasure. And Retiji, I am showing the sky.
I can see the sky.
Yeah.
You're showing me the moon, right?
That was yesterday. Today is Seagull's Day, na? So I'm showing the sky. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Missing Mumbai anyway. Okay, so let's continue. We have almost reached the end of this session. We are going on to the third part. So he starts training these gulls and all that, and those gulls that were outcasts, they're being trained under him, and those gulls that were not believing in him, slowly they start joining Jonathan. And as a result, the number of gulls start increasing. So what unfortunately happens is these gulls, the crowd grows and grows, and they start beginning to idolize him. This is what happens, when you become very famous and, people listen to your words, they think that you're God, So they started calling him special and gifted and divine, and they even call him the son of the great gull himself. And Jonathan finds this pretty painful. He says that the only difference between him and the gulls is that he and his students started practicing what they really are. He says, you are no different from me. If you practice, you will become like me. It's not that I have come with some special powers and have become like this, born with this skill. It's not that. We all have this inner potential in us. We just need to realize that potential. And then he tells him, and Fletcher, the seagull, he is also undergoing the same physical pains, when he's flying, he's hitting against a cliff and everything. And he says, don't worry, you did not die. You have just changed your level of consciousness. There's just been a change in your consciousness. And this angry flock, when they try to attack them, there is a group in the flock that tries to attack Jonathan. When they are trying to attack him, Jonathan and Fletcher immediately they move away, because they have perfected the art of flying, that there's no distance between time and space. So he says, and then he says, love is actually the real gull, the good in every one of them. You have to see the real gull. Everybody, though they behave negatively towards you, look at the good in each one. And then he tells Fletcher, now you are ready to take over as an instructor. You must keep finding your unlimited self. I have reached this particular stage. Now it is your turn to shine. You can do it. You take over as an instructor. See, many times if you see, people perfect a certain stage, like when you're working in a company also, you give way to those who are below you. You are not feeling that, oh, I must stick to my chair, my power and all that. That is not there. Give them, because you have transcended that stage. So give the other person the chance to become what you were, what you are. And so this is because of his compassion and his love. That love is so strong in him. He has realized, he knows what love is and what compassion is. So Jonathan, he vanishes and he tells Fletcher that you're ready to take over as an instructor, and you must keep finding your unlimited self. So this is how he is motivating, and what happens is, like I told you, the gulls keep increasing, right? And then Fletcher obviously is having he must be having many students, and he trains them, and then in this way he is passing on what he has learned, from his seniors. He is passing on to the younger gulls. He says, there is a lot to learn. If you have to reach where Jonathan has reached, there is a lot more to learn. And then he remembers, John saying there is no limit to learning. And then with that enthusiasm, he starts, his race to learn and to excel. This is how the book ends. He is vanishing, and Fletcher is ready to take over as the instructor. So in this last part, you find that the price of excellence, you will be misunderstood by many people. People will call you the devil, they'll call you the god or whatever, but you should keep that aside and you should just move forward. So one question that comes to mind is, why do some people find it very difficult to accept somebody's ability? Somebody is becoming great and doing something good because of their hard work and their own, because of their self-belief and faith and everything. As a result of that hard work, they have reached that position. But why do some people feel that, oh, it is divine intervention or it is magical? Why do people believe that? Why is it? Why don't they realize that, you can excel in whatever you're doing if you work for it? Why is it? This is one question that I would like to ask you, and what do you feel about it? Why is it that people find it very difficult to accept that? See, many girls, they started idolizing Jonathan, idolizing him, saying that, oh, he is able to fly because he's gifted and all that. We are not gifted. We won't have that ability. People put themselves down. Why is it? Why do they do that? Why do people do that? Non-acceptance because of ego? Yes. There is an ego, so you don't accept what you see. You feel that it's not in our hands, and there is nothing that we can do about it. I'm happy where I am. Anything else? Anybody else can say something about that? I know it is quite deeply philosophical. Anyone? See,
because of I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Tell me, Ami.
Yeah, it could also be because of lack of faith in one's own self. So when you project yourself to others, you were like, no, I haven't done anything. It's only because of some divine intervention or God's intervention that something good has come out of it. So mostly, you tend to lack in self-faith, and that projects, and
you don't want to put in an effort.
Yes,
you just want everything easy. People will just go to God. Oh God, give me the strength to fly and all that, and they think that, okay, God will give them that strength to fly. But you have to put in that your 2-bit, right, to do it. God has given you the brains and that intelligence to do all this. So you'll say, why are you sitting under a tree and praying for this? Why don't you move your arms and legs and start, or your wings and start flying and perfect that art, you know? So that's what, you know, we want everything the easy way, shortcut way.
Served on a platter, you know, ready.
Yeah, given on a silver platter, not even a silver platter. You want everything like that. And here we also see that you need to, yeah, it's easy to blame God than the actions. Very true. If something doesn't work, oh, God did not give me this, it's because of that. Poor God. He is being done all the blame game, everything is falling on him. True. And you know, this book, when I read it, it was just 3 parts, but I believe there is a 4th part to this, which Richard Bach has introduced, which I came across very recently. I haven't read much of it, but in that I would like to add that also to this, so that you know what is happening, that it's like an addition to this particular since God can't reply, so we blame God. Yeah, very true. That's what they do, you know, safest, no, he will not retaliate, kind of seems, though he might retaliate in other. There's a poem called Risk Us. Okay, I don't know about that, I must read it. So this part 4, it says that, you know, Jonathan, he leaves, okay, he leaves this place, and he is going, you know, Fletcher is taking over and all that. And what happens, his message of freedom, you know, that where the gulls are learning how to fly and all that, it becomes very successful. People start following him, you know. But this freedom, this so-called freedom, it doesn't last long, because this flock, they stop flying and they treat Jonathan like a religious icon. It's like, you know, initially everybody is following what they're doing, and when that person disappears, we start idolizing, you know, putting some kind of a symbol or something, and you know, you say that, okay, if I keep praying to this particular icon, things will work, you know. So he starts, these flock, they start treating Jonathan like an icon, you know. His teachings have become twisted. This is how, you know, religion also, we will not discuss too much of religion, but religion is also like this. When earlier everything is being spoken and you're practicing it and you understand it, and later on it gets all diluted, and you know, people are manipulating that to suit their own needs. So this is what is happening in case of Jonathan's flying lessons also. You know, he's being treated as a religious icon. So what happens is these flock of gulls, they are creating meaningless rituals. They're standing on the beach, they're reciting poems, they are collecting pebbles, and they put it in these shrines which are built for these students. You know, Jonathan's disciples and students, they have also been idolized, and there's a big ceremony and all that thing goes on, you know. And this is actually coming totally against Jonathan's original ideas. And ultimately what happens is, this message becomes so confusing and so hard to understand that even the ordinary gulls don't understand what was Jonathan actually trying to teach. What was he trying to impart? It all got diluted in all these other meaningless rituals, you know. We can understand that if we relate it to human, in the human life, we can understand the kind of rituals and things. People don't understand, but they all do it. For what reason, nobody knows, but they do it. So these meaningless rituals being created, and then even the most ordinary gulls, they were unable to understand what is happening. And then, you know, some of these gulls, they grow tired of these traditions, you know, these empty traditions. And like this, there was one gull, skeptical gull. There was a gull that was skeptical. He did not believe in all this Jonathan's idea of flight, freedom and everything. And he was rejecting all these ceremonies and rituals and everything. And he started questioning, you know, was this Jonathan Livingston Seagull, did he really exist or not? Huh? so he says, oh, this was a big fairy tale. And then, you know, he feels that, oh, you know, life is so meaningless, there's no purpose in living and all that. And this Anthony, he decides to commit suicide. This Anthony Gull, he tries to commit suicide. And just as he is diving into the water, you know, he is going to commit suicide, mind you, as he is diving into the water, he is intercepted by a talented flyer, an unbelievably talented flyer who inspires him. And when he asks the name of this flyer, that flyer says, I am John. That is Jonathan. So what has happened is John has returned to nurture this new seeker, and he wants him to bypass all this corruption of this institution, and he wants his original message to be reintroduced into this flock community. So he finds that this is the best person to reintroduce my teachings. So here also you will see that the best person to introduce a teaching is a skeptic, because a skeptic will not believe something, and when he experiences something, when he experiences it, his faith, he gets faith, he gains faith into that because of that experience, and then he starts propagating that truth, right? So initially Anthony was a skeptic, and he saw that life is useless, all these empty dogmas and principles that are being bandied about, and he becomes very disillusioned. And then he becomes a faithful follower, and then he starts the, you know, practicing this true practice of freedom and flight. So this is what this part 4 is all about, you know. So that means years after Jonathan has left, his teachings have spread, but it was not faithfully, they were not sticking to his teachings. They were all, there was a mix and everything, you know, some people wanted to gain some mileage out of it. So they had all these rituals and rules and everything. And then it was Anthony the skeptic who was questioning all these rigidities, you know, in these teachings, and who did not believe in the existence of Jonathan himself. And Jonathan returned as a mentor for Anthony, and this helps the Gulls go into that field of personal growth, that inner joy, that spirit of flight and everything. So people, they start believing, these Gulls start believing, you know, it is not any dogma or anything, this is reality. We can have this in our life, right? So with that, guys,